I challenged myself to create and release a mobile game in 1 week. Well, about a week. So I needed to come up with the idea and design for the game, and thankfully I did about 6 years ago. The game is very simple. You try to guess the correct rectangle as many times in a row as you can. Your streak increases with every correct guess. You get more points added to your score the higher your streak is. You get a strike if you guess incorrectly, and the game is over if you get 3 wrong guesses. So I began porting the web prototype to Unity. Starting with the game scene, I created sprites for the rectangle buttons. When we click a rectangle, we can simply hide the first sprite and show the second sprite, and it creates the illusion of a button being pressed. I wanted to get used to using scriptable objects in Unity, so I created a rectangle scriptable object that contains the ID and the colors for the default, correct, and incorrect states. I randomly select a rectangle to be correct, and then I change the color when we press a button. Now I can implement the rest of the game logic for the streak, score, and strikes. I started with the streak UI, then the score UI. The score works by multiplying the current streak by 100 and adding that to the previous bonus, and then adding that to the previous score. I use sprites for the strikes and used a dictionary to look up the strike object within their parent transform based on the player's current amount of strikes as the key. When the player reaches 3 strikes, we load the game over scene. Oh, and I wanted to insult the player. So I created a scriptable object containing a list of insults that I randomly select when the scene loads. I also wanted to keep track of the player's highest streak and score. To do that, I used a singleton called data store, where I save the scores to Unity's player prefs and also load the scores from the player prefs. And then I over-engineered the buttons by creating a button class that each button will inherit from. And the functionality will be placed in the onMouseUp method. And I use scriptable objects for the text of each button. So I created 2 buttons, play again and quit. Play again will take us back to the game scene. Quit will take us to the start menu scene. In the start menu scene, I added the title and buttons start, scores, and quit. I also added some social media buttons at the bottom linking to my website, Twitter, and YouTube channel. For the scores button, I created a new scores scene to load. Here I used the data store again to load the player's highest streak and scores like I did in the game over scene. Because this will be a free game, I wanted to take this opportunity to learn Unity ads. And in order to not annoy the player with ads, I came up with a second chance modal that will show when the player gets 3 strikes. The player can choose to watch an ad to remove a strike or be taken to the game over scene. For testing though, I had a few problems, but I ended up using Unity's simulator to test my UI against different resolutions and sizes. I found a little magic option on the canvas scaler that allows the UI to scale with the screen size and saved me a lot of time. The game was completed in under a week and I was feeling pretty good about myself. That was until I decided to try to implement some DevOps and automate the Unity build process for Android. I use GitLab for my cloud repository and I've tested their CI/CD pipelines to run my unit tests, but I've never automated the build process before. So I found part 1 of an article that showed running unit tests, but it was missing part 2 and part 3 for the build and deploy processes. Then I ran into some Unity documentation that showed you can run Unity in the command line interface. Cool, so how do I do that? In the GitHub depths, I ended up finding an outdated repo with an example of automating an Android build. So I used that as an outline and implemented my own version, which took longer than creating the game itself. Because it was outdated, there was a lot of Unity methods and variables that I had to change and update. Every time I fixed one problem, another one would pop up. As you can see, it took a few attempts finally getting a passing pipeline and a working build, and I still have to ask myself if it was worth it. But now it was time to release my game to the Google Play Store and the App Store. Google actually makes it really easy by telling you exactly what you need and lays it out all in a checklist form. But one of the first requirements was a privacy policy. I had no idea what was required to make a privacy policy, so I had one generated and found a few examples for indie studio mobile games. And after a couple of hours, I had a privacy policy posted on my site that fit my game, which I had to update a few more times. So I finished up the description, title, screenshots for the game, everything that was required, and uploaded my game to the Google Play Store. So now it was time to release my game for iOS devices. And to be clear, I already didn't like Apple as a company, so I'm a little biased. But this process, I think, has pushed that dislike to hatred for Apple. The process started with creating a developer account and paying them $99 for the developer certification, which is expensive, but I was already prepared for that. I'd be lucky to make that back with this free app, but I'm doing it for the experience. Yet somehow I failed to realize that you cannot release an app to the App Store from a Windows machine. You have to have a Mac. Because I already gave Apple $99 to put a free app in the App Store, I was determined to do exactly that. So I reached out to a friend and remoted into their Mac. I probably spent close to 3 hours uploading the build to my dev account. And then after 24 hours, my app was approved for beta testing. I had a few friends test the game, and of course I got some feedback. So I went back to Unity, made some changes, and started that whole process over again. Then I received an email shortly after uploading a new build that my app was rejected. Apparently, as of iOS 14, I have to get the user's permission for tracking data. I failed to realize that Unity Ads tracks users' data. Thankfully, I found some Unity documentation that said there is a package that handles this in Unity. And as it would go, I went through the build and upload process for the third and it got denied again. The permission modal is not showing up. Cool. Apparently I don't read well. So I went through the build and upload process for the fourth and thankfully the actual final time. And 3 weeks later from the start of the challenge, I can finally say that I have a mobile game on the Play Store and the App Store. So what did I learn? I learned that I do not want to create mobile games. But seriously, you can download Guessin. It's on the App Store and the Play Store, which you already know because you watched the video and you also enjoyed the video. So you're going to leave a like and you're going to subscribe because you liked the video.